Welcome to Art.BSL Episode 6. I'm Carrie Maloney from the Traveler Broads, and I'm here in the studio with the Mad Potter himself, Steve Barney. Hey, Steve, can you believe we made it to Episode 6?
Yeah, Carrie, this podcast is starting to get momentum. There are people actually listening, and the feedback has been awesome. Let's keep it going.
Yeah, just do it, Steve.
In this episode, Kerry and I sit down in the studio with watercolor artist extraordinaire Herb Willey. Herb shares his experience as a representational artist, and we learn how he became internationally famous.
Then Steve goes on location for Second Saturday at the venerable Gallery 220, where we caught up with Herb's wife, Serena.
In the second half of the show, Kerry takes a short trip up Route 603 to the new location of the Starfish Cafe, her favorite restaurant just about anywhere. Kerry has a chance to learn the Starfish backstory from NICU nurse turned street minister turned restaurateur Di Philhart. Coming to you from the corner of Washington and Central in Bay St. Louis Depot District, welcome to Art.BSL, the podcast with a finger on the pulse of the buzzingest arts and culture scene on the Gulf Coast. I'm your host, Steve Barney, the Mad Potter. Join me and my illustrious team of insiders, wise guys, and know-it-alls every week as we take a deep dive journey into what's happening in Old Town, the Depot District, and all across the coast. So buckle your seatbelt, sit back, and get ready for the next episode of Art.BSL. We're here in the Art.BSL studios with Herb Willey. How are you doing today, Herb?
I'm doing good.
Well, Kerry and I have had the chance to interview a number of different artists, but you're the most famous in Hong Kong.
More in Taiwan and Malaysia than Hong Kong, but...
Tell us about that.
Well, I'm a member of the International Watercolor Society, and my paintings have been in all the watercolor shows, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Malaysia. Mostly paintings that have been produced here in Bay St. Louis. It's kind of interesting. One of the paintings that was in the Hong Kong show was the Crab Festival at Bay St. Louis.
You said the International Watercolor Society.
Yes.
That's a pretty elite group.
It's fairly elite. Don't know anybody else in this region that's in it.
You're like in the top 0.001% of watercolor artists around the world, and you're very humble.
How are we getting this international audience? What's the draw?
The fact that I had connections in Malaysia through my wife, so I was encouraged to enter some jury shows in that area, and they were accepted into the show, and from there was recognized in other regions.
Do you travel there?
I don't like to get too far away from surgeons.
Yeah, we're glad you're healthy.
So we got to jump right to this. Your wife, tell us about the role that she plays in promoting you. Really, there's a lot of work that she's doing behind the scenes, right? On social media. What?
Yes.
Tell us that story.
If I had to put a percentage, I'd say she's probably 80% of the reason that my paintings have moved around and are recognized. She has spent an enormous amount of time online researching art on her own, how artists become recognized. She's just not afraid to approach anybody about my work, and I really recognize that.
But your work is extraordinary. It really is.
Well,
and
thank you. I appreciate it.
Can you describe it to our listeners who may have never seen what you paint?
I talked about Picasso a little bit in the fact that one of his favorite statements was that I paint what I see, which is, when you see a Picasso painting, you wonder what
kind of drugs
he
was on.
what he was on when he sees some of these things. But I have to say that is my motto, but I say I'm not afraid to paint what I see. Representational art is not popular, but that's what I do. I paint what I see.
Yeah, but what you see are the essence of the characters.
I got a phone call from a lady. She said that her postman had seen this painting in the show, and she was pretty sure that it was her husband. And she wanted to know, she said, I can't afford to buy the original, but I wonder if I could buy a print of it from you. I said, no, but I'll give you a print of it. She said the dog had died from cancer. And it really meant a lot to her family. Yeah. The little girl was, upset about the dog dying and everything. And so I had a print made for her, and I met her and gave her the print.
That's a wonderful story.
But it makes what you do worthwhile.
Do Do you paint people that you know, or is it mostly...
Both, but I paint a lot of strangers. We don't look for things. We always are ready to take photos wherever we go and whatever we're doing. Very often we will go out and come back with photographs, and maybe a week later I'll look through the photographs and find one that, oh my God. I was an advertising designer for 40-something years. You work in studio, and that's what I'm comfortable with. Very seldom will work on more than one at a time, and I usually average 2 to 3 days for, say, an 11 by 14 painting.
Yeah.
Recently, I did a commission job. I painted the harbor at St. Croix Island for a man, and it might be the largest painting I've ever done, watercolor painting, because it was 2 by 3 feet, and it took me about 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is Gallery 220 the main place that people can get originals and prints of your work?
Yes, I don't really hang too many originals. The market doesn't bear enough. Well, I can show more if I use prints. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and
if I use my original,
right?
I'm really not concerned about selling. I have paintings that I don't like to sell. I sold a painting in the show in Taiwan. When I sent the painting over to the show, I doubled the price on it because I didn't want to sell it, and somebody bought it. I found that I painted much better when I stopped worrying about whether I sold it or not. And I'm at my age now, and my wife having an income makes no difference to me if I sell or not. I'm happy to sell to strangers and other artists.
Do you have any advice for young artists that are trying to get started right now?
Yeah, go into gardening. I'm 81 years old. I'm very cynical about the art industry. And I kind of nicknamed Bay St. Louis the home of the sister-in-law artist. Because you talk to somebody, they say, oh, what do you do? I say, well, I'm an artist. Oh, my sister-in-law's an artist. I really am crazy about automobiles. I build scale models. I belong to an International Plastic Modeling Society, and I've won close to 300 awards for scale models that I built. And I'm crazy about automobiles. I really, really love them. And I painted a 1940 Ford, and I had a print hanging up in the gallery, and a man came in, was looking at my art, and he saw that, and he says, oh my God. He said, that's the best flathead Ford motor I've ever seen in watercolor. I just can't believe it. And he was the transmission designer for Ford Motor Company in Detroit.
How do you decide to spend your time between, you say, oh, I'm feeling creative today, I want to build a scale model, or I want to paint a beautiful watercolor?
It's very difficult. I've devoted much more time to painting in this last 8 years than I did previously. I majored in fine art at USL. Art was just something that I did. And now I am art. It's
interesting.
It transformed in this last 8 years. I kind of thrown out the other things that I was doing and devoted myself entirely to painting. I'm the only coast artist, watercolor, oil, or otherwise, that was invited to the Mississippi Invitational this year.
When I knew that I had finally arrived was when I was the star of a Herb Willey painting, right? With me performing on the lawn of the French Potager. My dog was there. The Raw Oyster Marching Club was there. There were like 11 characters from Bay St. Louis that we could identify in this picture.
Yeah, I sold out of those prints.
There you go. Maybe you better do another run on them. The Art.BSL podcast is brought to you by the generous financial support of our listeners. Click the Be a Patron button from the Podbean app to learn more about how you can support our production costs through crowdfunding. Get a cool Art.BSL t-shirt and other cool swag, and thanks for your support.
Next up, Steve stops by Gallery 220 for Second Saturday. It's there where Herb's wife, Serena, gets to tell her side of the story.
Serena, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today. You're a big part of the Herb Willey marketing team, and we're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
That exposure with what you're doing on the internet and the social marketing, he would not be as commercially successful, I don't think.
Partly true. It's partly true. But, since the internet is free,
Yeah, information is universally accessible around the world.
Yes, it's like a small world, on the internet, and you just try to make full use of it.
Yeah, so the internet has really changed the world of marketing for art internationally, right?
That's right. That's right. So, you just try to make full use of it, like, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I kind of helped him to write to all these places that he had exhibited. Yeah, I just wrote in, I said, well, it's just worth a try. So I just looked them up and write to the associations. And they say, okay, yeah, we'll talk to him and all that. And so that's how, he got in and have an exhibition. Yeah. We drive around a lot. And so, I just snap the pictures that I think is interesting. Yes, because, he likes to paint only boats and birds. So I was like, I think people are interesting. I don't know why he doesn't like to paint people. And so I decided to start doing that, take pictures of people for him to practice.
Are you comfortable talking about how you and Herb met?
Did he tell you how we met?
I know that the internet was involved, I believe. That's about all I know.
That's it. We met through the internet 20-something years ago, 22 years ago maybe. Then he came over for a visit. He met all my family. He wanted to make sure that I was legit.
That's got to be intimidating, though. Say, here's this man I met on the internet, and
yeah, and it's like 24 hours, flight. So and then we went out for 2 weeks, and he said, "Would you like to meet my family?" I was like, "Okay," and that's how I ended up here.
I see you out to eat sometimes at restaurant, and Herb tells me the story about how he was expecting you're going to do all kind of cooking when you first met, and you say, no, I don't cook either.
Yeah, I've never cooked in my life. So, I did tell him, but, I guess he forgot. I told him that I don't cook.
Where do you like to go to eat?
A lot of places, actually. Yeah, I like to try different things, different restaurants,
What draws you to Bay St. Louis here?
The job, it was because of my job.
You work an awful lot.
Yeah, I do. I work 2 jobs. But I'm a table games dealer, and I work at 2 casinos down here. I can deal all the games, but I'm mostly on craps.
Do you like work at the casino?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I love working there.
This is a special scene, this second Saturday Gallery 220. What's special about it?
All the wonderful artists, all the wonderful people here. That's what makes this place. Everybody, they have a beautiful heart.
Art.BSL comes to you from the production studios of the BSL Creative Arts Center at the corner of Washington and Central Streets in the Depot District. The Creative Arts Center, profiled in the June 2021 issue of Southern Living magazine, features a well-equipped pottery studio, teaching classes in wheel throwing, and hen building for all ages. Build anything you can imagine in our fab shop with metal wood and fiberglass. Print your own t-shirts in the screen printing studio. Learn mosaics with the Plate Thief. 3D printing, drone photography, podcast production, and so much more at the coast's most eclectic makerspace. Learn more at bslcac.com.
The Starfish Cafe recently moved from its location in Old Town to a couple miles up the road. It's there where Kerry had a chance to sit down with Starfish founder Di Philhart.
This is Kerry Maloney here on location at actually my favorite restaurant in town, maybe in the whole world. I'm here to talk to Di Philhart of Starfish Cafe. Thanks for joining us today, Di.
Thanks for having me. I'm pretty excited that we're this close to getting our feet back on the ground again.
Back on the ground, because down on Main Street was the old Starfish, where you could go pay what you want, eat healthy food. What's the business plan has kind of changed a little?
The business plan has changed a little bit. The pay what you want, some people loved it, some people hated it. It worked well. We were able to keep our food cost at a minimum and like 14% or less, which is unheard of in the restaurant industry. That's totally impossible right now. I can go to the store and in 1 week stuffs up 100%. So that's one reason. The other reason is that we've expanded a lot our programs. And so we have our regular program students that come for 6 weeks or 12 weeks. So we've kind of changed that because there's students that want to come just to get enough skills that they can get in. They don't want to start in the dish room. So we can get them knife skills and how to follow a recipe and be on the line. And those that want Serve Safe certification, they're going to stick with us for 12 weeks. Then that way that Serve Safe certification is good for 5 years. They'll also be beginning to make recipes on their own. We also started some on-the-job training. It gives them the opportunity to just get job skills.
Yeah.
Typically, my student population who have had to overcome a lot of things, whether it's homelessness, whether it's lack of food, whether it's abuse in the home, whatever it is that got them in that place. And it takes us 3 to 4 weeks to get them to a place where they're confident enough and comfortable enough. So Zach is my youngest son. He's also now the executive director of Pneuma-Winds of Hope, as well as the executive chef.
Well, Zach is also an incredible chef because while the food is healthy here, it's also absolutely delicious. Is there formal training involved? How did you guys become in the food business at all?
Well, he started out beside me in the kitchen at the Christian camp I was at before I went to the city. So by the time he was 4, he was slicing tomatoes. He was working in the kitchen, and he developed his palate from that. And he would, at a very young age, like he would taste things and he would say, we should put this in there. He's an incredible musician, incredible. He was a percussionist at the Frank Sinatra School of the Arts. Got a job with a contractor, and their Greek mother was coming to the States, and they wanted to make sure they had something to keep her busy. So they made a restaurant. So the health department came in, and she wanted to know where the dish room was. And the guy that was the architect looked like deer in the headlights. And Zach said, oh, right over here. This is the dirty side of the kitchen, all the dishes. And he's blah, 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 blah. So she left, and the guy that was building went, what do you know about food? The end of the story is Zachary worked with Yaya for 6 months, and then Yaya went back to Greece, and Zachary ran the Greek restaurants. So a lot of what happened under that guidance of the Mediterranean culture and Greece, and he just went on. And then he worked with Michael and Stella at the Sycamore House. He thought about going to culinary school, but everybody that was already in the business said, you don't need to go to culinary school. You already got it.
But I also want to know about like where these foods are coming from. Are you dealing with local farmers?
As much as we can. We get organic as much as we can. The advantage of Starfish being a non-profit is that people that we know that have like organic farms and leftover produce and things like that, they donate it. That definitely helps as well. We look for organic as much as we can. We get our beef. We were the first restaurant on the Mississippi Gulf Coast that was using Honestly beef, which is from Collins, Mississippi. And so all the local farmers, they've made their own finishing grain that they feed to them. So we're so excited.
Roos Roots? Are you?
Oh my goodness. That's like my egg capital of the world.
For all our listeners, we're outside on the beautiful outdoor patio at Starfish Cafe, where you can be out here, feel safe to eat. We're all wearing masks, and we're being as safe as possible.
We ask people to wear a mask when you come in. You can take it off at the table and put the mask back on your way out.
The Art.BSL podcast is brought to you by the generous financial support of our listeners. Click the Be a Patron button from the Podbean app to learn more about how you can support our production costs through crowdfunding. Get a cool Art.BSL t-shirt and other cool swag, and thanks for your support. In the next part of the interview, as the rain started to fall, Di tells us about her nonprofit Pneuma-Winds of Hope and her higher calling to come to the Bay after Katrina. Then she shares what has kept her here to continue her mission of compassion and healing.
Pneuma-Winds of Hope was started in 1997. From 97 to 99, we went from Pennsylvania to the streets of Brooklyn. We worked with an organization called Living Waters Fellowship. From there, we moved there in 99, so Zachary became a missionary kid. And we worked with a lot of organizations, New York City Resource and Bowery Mission, and we just did a lot of street ministry. So the summer of 05, we kind of tried to figure out what the next step was. July 13th, one of our board members had a vision, a decimated coastline. She said there was just nothing there. And she felt like God was saying, there's going to be a really bad storm, and that's your next assignment. So she called me, and so we believed it, so we sent a note to all the churches that we were connected to, and by the second week of August, we had an entire garage filled with food and clothing and medical supplies, and we had no idea.
You're telling me 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina, you had supplies lined up for the...
Well, we didn't know where it was. We knew we were going somewhere. We didn't know where. But we pulled out on the 30th at a gas station, and he said, "Where are you headed?" And we said, "We have no idea." But God told us it was someplace that wasn't going to have a lot of help. And he said, "I know the plans God has for you. It's Bay St. Louis, Mississippi." And that's how we made it to Bay St. Louis.
Okay, so that's what brought you to Bay St. Louis. Why'd you stay?
I think, one, because Bonnie had that dream, and we knew that we were here for a season. And I think the people, every place we went, we did what we called treasure hunting. So we would we had over 5,000 volunteers over the course of the first year that came, most of them from California, because that's where City Team was. And so we would send them out in treasure hunt. So we would go to somebody's empty lot, and we'd just sift through the dirt, and we'd find rosaries, or we'd find pictures, or we'd find something. Every time we could find something of value. And in the meantime, the people that by the first of the year, when they started to get trailers and stuff, they would just they would make tea. They would open little cans of sausages, and they were so hospitable and so grateful. And I just thought, my move here was 48 years. That was it. Grass never got under my foot. And I watched, and I fell in love with a community that, there was love. And that was probably what I've been looking for my whole life anyhow. That was number one. And number two, I just knew that the work wasn't going to be done. And I had a friend in New York that said, "You're there for the beginning of sorrows, but remember, God's going to keep you there for the sorrows to come." And today, it's the sorrows that come. It's what we're walking through with COVID, walking through with everything that we're walking through now is exactly what he told me in 2006.
And you come with COVID with a unique perspective because you've been a nurse, correct?
Right. I was a pediatric NICU nurse for 35 years. I have lots and lots of friends that are still in the medical profession. All of us are struggling. What's happening now is a lot of people are so fearful when they're faced with the ventilator, and they want a vaccine, and they want help now, and you don't have anything to give them. I mean, you still try to give them compassion, and it's challenging sometimes because you know that there were alternatives. And so I got my shot, and I think for me, the thing that was so hard was whenever I had so many people that came and said, "I got my vaccine for you. I got my vaccine for you." And I'm like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And then the game changed with Delta, because now you took the vaccine for me, and I'm so grateful, but you can still carry it and give it to somebody else. And the people that didn't get vaccinated, they give it too. So all at once, everybody, it's one melting pot now. And so the game gets harder.
Di Philhart, thanks so much for joining us today. Would you like to leave us with any final thoughts?
I think the blessing is that we always realize that what's in front of us is already smaller than what we've already overcome. Because I think we see the mountain ahead of us and think we can't get over it. But if you look back, don't stay there. But if you look in the rearview mirror, the magnanimity of what we have all overcome in our lives, from whether it's childhood to abandonment to whatever it is, it's always huge. But what's ahead of us, sometimes we shy back because it's like, but what's in front of us, we can scale that mountain. We can get to the top of it if we just choose to not keep looking in the rearview mirror. But every once in a while, I got to look back there and go, man, holy cow, look what I already overcome. And that would be the blessing for humanity, is to know that we can get to the top on the other side.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 6. One thing I want you all to remember is Starfish Grill is only open 3 days a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So get out there and support them. You can also order online and pick up. Steve, did you have fun this episode?
This was great. I'm really excited about keeping this podcast sustainable, and we're starting to build some more listeners. So make sure to pass the word. We have a new, simpler URL, artbsl.com. You can download all episodes there anytime.
You can listen to all our old episodes. Thank you so much, y'all, for tuning in.
We're counting on listener support to keep this podcast sustainable.
Hey, Steve, should we give a shout out to the patrons we do have now?
We have 4 patrons, and we're so excited about that. Big thank you to our first patron, Mary Safaris, your mom, Judy Norris,
my biggest supporter always,
Gallery 220 Potter, Julie Nelson, and our dear friend Karen Tyner from The Plate Thief. So thank you very much. Thank you. It is so easy to be a patron. Click the Be a Patron button. You can pledge anything from $1 a month up. And we're asking you, if you're a fan of this podcast, please become a patron and throw us $5 a month. We'd really appreciate it.
It would go a long way. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it. It's a wrap on this episode of Art.bsl, the podcast with a finger on the pulse of the buzzingest arts and culture scene on the Gulf Coast. I'm your host, Steve Barney, the Mad Potter of Bay St. Louis, inviting you to join me and my illustrious team of insiders, wise guys, and know-it-alls every week as we take a deep dive journey into what's happening in Old Town, the Depot District, and all across the coast. So thanks for listening, and see you next week for another episode of Art.bsl.